morning. That's right. It's time for class. Vera Brittain, popular singer, World War II, Britain, hence the Union Jack guy. You might remember I played this song for you the last day we were in school, which seems like about 400 years ago. Yeah. I'm going to bring this up today because today is our first lesson on rhetorical analysis by Vera. Yeah. By Vera. A couple weeks ago, my queen, gave a speech. You might remember, maybe not. Sorry, cup of tea. Earl Grey, hot. Anyway, she gave a speech. I'm going to read, not the whole 3-minute speech, but the last few lines. Thought I'd get you ready for the rhetoric. The Queen, my Queen, who, by the way, has me planted in America as a mole, sent me a signal, a message. Two things. One, that rhetoric is important, and two, that I was doing my job. Sort of I'm not a 007, really like a 009 and a half. But anyway, it said, this time we join with all nations across the globe in a common endeavor. Okay, she's going back to the fact that her first broadcast to the public was in 1940 when she was a teenage girl, right? And she was telling the children of England not to worry, that the young princess was on the job, right? By the way, my queen drove a truck during World War II, supplies, she risked bombing, all right? Heck of a leader. At Earl Grey. Anyway, she goes on to say that using the great advances of science and our instinctive eyes to heal, we will succeed, and that success will belong to every one of us. We should take comfort that while we may not have more still to endure, better days will return. And this is the line that I wanted the code from her to acknowledge that I'm doing a good job over here. She's watching, right? We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again. But now I send my thanks and warmest good wishes to you all. Let's go back to that line, right? Two things going on here. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again. The last one, an allusion to Vera Brittain. Right? See, and the hint to me. See, I played it for her the last day of school. She referenced it to me and let me know that she's watching, always watching, okay? But also, as we all know, when you repeat the same phrase a few times in a row, it's called Anaphora. And that little baby better be on your cheat sheet for the AP exam, because the chance that Anaphora is going to pop up somewhere is pretty good. All right, so enough of Vera Brittain, God bless her, and let's get on to the essay that you were supposed to attack by today, and if you didn't, attack it later, okay? And they're all going to be the same, all right? And whether you have it in front of you, that's a terrible idea, especially with the coffee cup in the way. The best I can do, all right? But you'll notice that it says, respond to the prompt with a thesis that analyzes the writer's rhetorical choices. You better have that. Select and use evidence to develop and support your line of reasoning. You better have that. And explain the relationship between the evidence and your thesis, okay? That's the very thing that we need to practice for the next 3 weeks, all right? The stuff that is in the blurb at the top is all to be used. Remember that. You're supposed to use it as if you know everything about it. So in 1933, British journalist and writer Vera Brittain, could be Brittain, depends on what part of the island she's from, published Testament of Youth. She lived 1893 to 1970, okay? You talk about her as if you know exactly who she is and you read the book, all right? That's the way this little game works, right? So when you go on down, it says the following passage is an excerpt from Brittain's memoir in which she reflects on her early educational experiences. Read the passage carefully. Compose a thesis statement you might use for an essay. It's funny, you might. No, you will, or you won't get the score. You might use for an essay analyzing rhetorical choices she makes to convey her perspective on education. That's the big thing. Convey her perspective on education for British girls, okay, in the early 20th century. All those words, when you're, now here's the issue, this is the problem. Unless you have a printer at your house with your parents standing by, that when they send the text and you upload it and the clock ticks, they're hitting print and bringing it to you while you're already starting to read it. You have to have a strategy to take notes, okay? That's the only thing, that's what I learned the other day doing this. We're used to writing on the paper, putting boxes around things, underlines, arrows. We don't have that ability, okay? So you got to have a strategy for writing things down. That's the one thing you're gonna have to take a look at, unless you have a printer and it's ready, all right? But most of us don't have printers. I haven't had a printer this century. I think the last printer I had was in the 90s, 94, 95. Got rid of them a long time ago. To my queen. So the last part says select at least 4 pieces of evidence from the passage. Explain how they support your thesis. That's what you have to do, okay? I guarantee you, they're putting this out on the College Board as, you know, examples for practice. This is exactly what we're going to get, all right? You got to remember, these teachers are going to be reading the same essay. They're going to be looking for the same thing. So we don't need to get cute. We need to be deliberate and answer the question, okay? So here's what I did. Just some tips that I got. One, you cannot possibly write all this stuff down. You'll run out of time. So you must be ready with a you know, I got notes. These are the notes that I took, okay? I noticed as I worked my way through it that there has to be a strategy. It took me a half hour to do this. That would be bad, right? Because you'd only have 15 minutes to write the essay. So, and that's because as I was trying to read it off the computer, I realized I was running into obstacles that we hadn't really done. When we practiced this, and we practiced this in 2, we did Abigail Adams' letter, all right? Which, by the way, I posted a link to a teacher in Florida who teaches how to deconstruct that. If you want a review session of how to go about it and hear a different perspective other than me, because I can be a madman, as you well know. The other one we did was Margaret Thatcher's speech about the death of Ronald Reagan. And I'm certain we did a third one, but it's slipping my mind right now. So we've had good practice on this, so we're going to get a few more in here. And this is why I wanted to take a look at this one today. So printing may, as we said, may not be an option, all right? So your notations on paper are vital. You got to get them down, right? You got to put these things on, and it needs to be separate paper, right? You need to have your notation paper and that paper you're writing on. And I'm going to tell you, it depends on your typing skills. It seems to me it might be easiest to write this out if your handwriting is good and take a picture and upload it. If typing is your thing, then type it, okay? But you're still going to need paper to write down your notes. Right? The other thing is, I'd have it ready both ways. If you get on there and you're having some computer issues or some typing issues, I'd be ready to go with paper anyway. All right. If you are going to print, you got to start reading it, getting it ready with your notes while someone prints it for you. Hopefully by the time you get through the blurb and make an outline that you can fill in, your parent or brother or sister has delivered the paper, okay? And you can get to marking. Otherwise, you're gonna have to take notes while you're reading. That makes it a little bit more difficult, which is why I think they gave us a whopping extra 5 minutes on this thing, okay? So, as I'm taking notes, right, the key thing here is, what are the rhetorical choices that she purposefully makes and explains her perspective on education for girls in the early 20th century. Okay? Well, it's not hard. The passage is not long. In fact, the passage is rather short, which makes me wonder if they're giving us a particularly shorter passage. So where they're probably factoring in time for you taking notes, which is a little out of the normal. The first thing that you see right away in the very beginning is when I was 11, our adorned governess departed. And I thought about the word adorned. I thought, do we use this? Is there something there? And then my family moved from Macclesfield to the tall gray stone house in Buxton, Derbyshire Mountain Spa, in order that Edward and I might be sent to good day schools. Well, the moment I see good day schools, I quit looking at the word adorned governess because she didn't put it in air quotes, okay? And because I thought, is she saying something? Is there like something dark and sinister with that word? But it might just been the fact that she was adorned, which means well loved. The good, all right, shows you, remember the topic. The topic is perspective on education for girls in early 20th century Britain. You need to write that enough in your essay that it makes you nauseous, okay? Because that's the whole purpose. What is her perspective, okay? When you read this, her perspective is, well, what to be expected. What would a girl from a free-thinking, sort of liberal-minded woman think about segregated or, separated boys and girls schooling in the 1920s, right? So it's probably not going to be positive. So that's what we're looking for. But this good, there's a bit. Okay, so I first thing I write down is diction, good, and I wrote down line 2. But as you continue on, it says, his was a small preparatory school for which a vigorous Buxton man was headmaster, semicolon. Mine inevitably described itself as, quote, a school for the daughters of gentlemen. Okay, so definitely using diction here. Okay, and it's right out of the chute. So I wrote down good, school for gentlemen, in quotes. I'm going to talk about diction right away. Paragraph 2, which I'm not going to read to you, offers a story, okay, a historical story of her life, okay. I hope we remember what that's called, anecdote. The cheat sheet that we want to make, that I need to make and put on here for us, is the rhetorical devices that I feel are pretty definitely going to be on here, right? Repetition, alliteration, anaphora, diction, okay, anecdote, these types of juxtaposition, these types of terms that are more, so you're not trying to rack your brain thinking about them. When you see it, there they are. College Board knows you're going to have it in front of you. So I want to have what I think is, the best list to have there. But this whole anecdote that she gives, okay, is she lays the groundwork for the fact that, she goes there, she sees some boys, and she talks to her brother, but when she gets home, they scold her, right? They really chastise her because she went to where the boys were, because boys are bad, and that's why boys must be kept away from girls. Boys are savages, right? And so this is the mentality of the time period, and of course it's also the mentality of England, right? And it's very prudish. It's very it's just the Edwardian era, and it's still, when it comes to sexual mores, it's all Victorian, okay? And so there's a reason why the ladies' shop for garments is Victoria's Secret, okay? All right, and so that is from leftover from this time period, okay? So this whole anecdote sets up the fact that boys are bad, okay? And then when we get down here into the third paragraph, okay, she still in the second paragraph, she says, I apologize, it is third paragraph, I scrolled. And the third paragraph is kind of interesting. It says, the small incident was my first intimation that, in the eyes of the older generation, free and unself-conscious association between boys and girls was more improper than a prudish suspicion of the opposite sex. Okay, so boys and girls aren't supposed to mix. This is what she learns here. Okay, this is what she learns. But listen to this. It aroused in me a rebellious resentment. Double R. Okay, was that an accident? That I have never forgotten. I had not heard in those days of co-educational schools, but I had been aware of their experimental existence, double E, and been able to foresee my far distant parenthood. All right, 3 times that she uses alliteration. That's purposeful. All right, remember what alliteration does? It beats the drum. Okay, rebellious resentment. All right, bingo. All right, what is her perspective on education? That boys and girls should not mix. She became rebellious. Okay, and she heard of experimental existence of schools where boys and girls went together. All right, school that that we used to, all America is today, and at one time was not. And then what does she say? I foresee far distant. Okay, meaning in the future, when I'm a parent, my kids will go to school, boys and girls together. Okay, alliteration on purpose. And so far in 3 paragraphs, I have diction, anecdote, and alliteration. Right? Could I talk about logos or ethos or pathos? Probably, but they're not strong here. These are screaming out for usage. Okay. The next paragraph tells the story of mistake there. Paragraph 4. But she says in the beginning of paragraph 4, I do not remember much about my day school except that when I first went there, I was badly bullied by 2 unpleasant little girls, who soon tired of the easy physical advantage given them by their superior age and stature, and instead endeavored to torment my immature mind by forcing upon it items of sexual information in their most revolting form. So remember, boys are bad, okay? This girl learned that when she went over and talked to her brothers, yeah, they were a bunch of rambunctious boys, being boys, playing games, whatever. But the innocence of the girls and the prim and proper nature of England, she would be home, or would not learn anything that wasn't wholesome, all right? But in reality, the girls were just as nasty, if not nastier, than the boys, okay? So this whole 4th paragraph talks about what is reality that she sees in school versus what was the perception by the parents, held in side by side. What is the word? Wait for it. Wait for it. Yeah, juxtaposition. You drop the J word on this test, you're starting at a 4. Okay? So, it is the perception, the juxtaposition of reality versus perception. Okay? All right? So, you got it. Right? Consequently, I don't even know what the last paragraph's about. I read it 3 times and thought, first of all, I'm not sure why they included it, because the rest of it gets the job done. But anyway. So now you're ready. Diction, anecdote, alliteration, juxtaposition. And I don't know if you can see, but I wrote it all in there. And I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I start realizing I'm running out of paper, okay? So I get down there. They wanted pieces of evidence. They wanted 4 of them. I have 4, okay? I already have, the intro has to have, right? You have to have the thesis. Well, we know what most of the thesis is. Brittain's perspective on education for girls in the early 20th century is, and right, that it's a crock, okay? Might want to not want to use that word. But it is, it's a show, it's a facade. She's definitely anti-separation and pro co-education, okay? And she's attacking the mores of the time period, okay? She believes the keeping the sexes apart is wrong, okay? And that's the gist of it, right? So I need basically an intro and I need 2 body paragraphs. And if I get to the conclusion, great. If I start writing it and make it look like I was trying and I didn't get done, that's not the most important part. The most important part is you do what they ask you. Notice that none of the prompt says, make sure you write one hell of a conclusion, right? Now, what's the purpose? And can you tell me the rhetorical strategies she uses or he uses that conveys that purpose, okay? Well, I set it up in just a couple paragraphs. Paragraph 1, paragraph 2, okay? Is this the right way to set it up? I have no idea, right? I put diction and alliteration in one paragraph, anecdote and juxtaposition in the other, okay? I easily could have mixed it up, all right? I did diction and alliteration because I was going to concentrate on how wordplay was used specifically to draw attention, right? The quotations showed me the sarcasm, right? And then, of course, the alliteration drew my attention to her feelings, okay? That's why I put those 2 together, all right? Do I think it's superior? Well, it is coming from me, so, okay. That's the way I would do it. But anyway, you don't have to. I put anecdote in juxtaposition because the anecdote is the anecdote. It's the story that puts everything in perspective, and she sees and she holds these 2 in juxtaposition, okay? So, but again, you could have done 3 paragraphs, all right? But the fact that the main thing is, are you talking about the 4 pieces of evidence? That's what they want, okay? And you have the juxtaposition of perception. Boys can corrupt girls, and that girls communicating with boys is improper because boys will corrupt, right? But the reality is the girls are just as vicious, okay? And, you know, your generation's growing up, you know, in middle school, the boys are goofy and the girls can be pretty vicious, right? But again, improper England, you know, propriety of England at the time didn't let them see that. So that's it, okay? Right? Do you get this? Now, in order to write that intro, I did go back in, right? You want to start it out and sound strong, so you answer those questions from the prompt that I gave you, or the broad, the narrow, and the thesis. The broad statement should have the when, where, what, why. The narrow should introduce the author, the piece, and its relationship to the subject. And then the thesis is the thesis. Well, we start out with the thesis right there. So everything you need for the broad or statement is in that blurb at the top, okay? When, early 20th century, where, England, what are we talking about? Childhood education. And why are we talking about it? Separation of boys and girls. Okay? Narrow it down, Vera Brittain, Testament of Youth, challenges, right? The notions that boys and girls should be separated, right? You just come right out of the box, sounding good, you know? The early 20th century England, primary schools and early childhood education separated the boys and the girls. Started out like that. Vera Brittain and her Testament of Youth, written in, you know, throw the date in there, challenged such notions from her own memoir, you know, something to that effect. And then you get in there and just give the goods, right? She uses diction, anecdote, alliteration, juxtaposition to challenge it, or you could say, if your time is of essence, a variety of rhetorical devices, sort of leave the reader hanging till they get into the body to get it. As long as you give it, you're good. Okay. Lastly, and we'll settle this up for the day. You may want to do this before you get, and you may want to have a couple. I don't know. Okay? You want to put in probably a half hour of prep time, getting this ready before the day, so you got everything. And I'd have it on different sheets. I wouldn't have it in one of these things. An empty outline. You might have this ready, okay? So as you're reading, you can jot down stuff, okay? Trust me, when jotting it down, you're keeping it and keeping it in your mind. You'll be ready to write with it. You'll notice that I put the rhetorical devices. I list them here, and I leave my quote. You're not writing the whole quote down, but you gotta tell me where it is somehow. Is it line 3? Is it P2, L2, paragraph 2, line 2, and then, you go for it, right? What's my thesis? That's the big one, right? And then when, where, what, why. Why do you have it written down ahead of time? To remind you to answer that when you're writing, okay? You just come right out sounding scholarly, okay? Ooh, scholarly, like that. And then narrow it down, okay? And actually, I should have put the author and the piece, okay? And then any notes or whatever you need. And then this year, it's just breaking it up, What are we going to do? What are we going to say, okay? If there's some point that you want to make, all right? However, you might find that this is enough for you to get started, but you got it ready. Conclusion, like I said, if you act like you're starting it, I think you'll be all right, okay? But if you got a minute, write one out. Conclusion, you can see that Vera Brittain, yada, 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 okay? So, basically, you submit it, you get it, all right? What I want you to do with watching this video, all right, is to go back and look at your essay, okay? And did you have that stuff, right? That's really what I'd like you to email me, right? Hey, I had it. I was spot on, okay? And if you had something that I didn't have, email me and say, hey, I found this. God knows I might have missed something, all right? I'm not perfect. I'm just close. And so, with that, I thought that I would send us out of here, okay, with a little more Vera Lynn. God bless her. I'm going to go get me some more tea, think about my queen, and maybe read some Into the Wild. Have a good one.